pregnant here to further examine the reasons we believe that the Yeha Temple, or Bayt al-Muqaddas, is the sacred place that preserved the Ark of the Covenant. First, Bayt al-Muqaddas is an Abyssinian Ge'ez word meaning the place of worship where you put the Ark of the Covenant, the Tabut. Yeha Temple was the place that preserved the Ark before it moved to its current location. As for the area that is called Bayt al-Muqaddas, that we know in Palestine right now, it was not called that during the time the Muslims entered Egypt. This area was called Il-Iliya, and the proof lies in the covenant of Omar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliphate to Prophet Muhammad. When Muslims entered Palestine, Omar established this covenant with the indigenous population, which is known as the Covenant of Omar, and it has been saved until now as an official artifact that shows the tolerance of Muslims with their neighbours. In this covenant, Omar offered security and protection to all the residents of Palestine after the lands were opened by Amr bin al-As and Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah. Omar wrote in his covenant, "In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, this is the assurance of safety which the servant of God, Umar, the commander of the faithful, has given to the people of Il-Iliya. He has given them an assurance of safety for themselves, for their property, their churches, their crosses, the sick and healthy of the city, and for all the rituals which belong to their religion. Their churches will not be inhabited by Muslims and will not be destroyed. Neither they, nor the land on which they stand, nor their cross, nor their property will be damaged." This implies that the region in Palestine that we refer to as Bayt al-Muqaddas did not hold such a name back then. Rather, it was called Il-Iliya. Second, Bayt al-Muqaddas in Islam is considered to be the first Qibla. In other words, the direction that Muslims used to face when they prayed before moving this Qibla towards the Kaaba. Qibla by nature has to be a structural shape in the form of a 3D cube, similar to the Kaaba, because a Qibla is a direction and a square is the only architectural shape that has the same measurements across all sides and unified angles, and can combine facing all directions from east, west, north and south. This direction exactly applies to the Yeha Temple, the same as it applies to the Kaaba. Third, and key to this argument, is that Bayt al-Muqaddas had to be present before the revelation of the verse that says, "God is the Exalted One who took his servant one night for a visit from the Al-Haram Mosque or Masjid in Mecca to the Aqsa Mosque or Masjid." And this applies to the Yeha Temple, but it does not apply to the location that was referred to recently as Bayt al-Muqaddas in Palestine. In fact, at the time of the revelation of this verse, there were no mosques in Palestine at all. What is referred to as the Aqsa Mosque, which is in Palestine and was built in the Umayyad age. The Yeha Temple, on the other hand, is the oldest place of worship which still exists today on the Abyssinian highlands, the Tur, way before Islam and Christianity. Fourth, the region that has the Yeha Temple on the Abyssinian highlands, the Tur, is named the Tigray region. Tigray has two famous cities. One is called Adwa and the other is called Aksua. Exactly, you heard that right, Aksua. It is the capital of the Tigray region and is known as the Sacred City. On Ethiopian maps, it is recorded as Aksum. Nevertheless, the old sources clarify that this region was called Aksua, not Aksum. In the Abyssinian language, for linguistic reasons, popular nouns follow the weight of ala fa'ul. They use this linguistic rhyme in naming the tribes, countries and adjectives. For example, ala-Jahbul, ala-Slum, al-Sha'ub, al-Zlum, al-Ruk, al-Aksum. That's why the name changed from Aksua to Aksum. However, the real name of this region, where the Yeha Temple, Bayt al-Muqaddas, is located, is called Aksua. The reference to the Al-Haram Mosque or Masjid in the verse I just mentioned, "God is the Exalted One who took his servant one night for a visit from the Al-Haram Mosque or Masjid in Mecca to the Aqsa Mosque or Masjid," is the region of Mecca where the Kaaba is, and obviously the reference to the Aqsa Mosque is the current region of Aksum in Abyssinian Tigray, where the Yeha Temple or Bayt al-Muqaddas is. This is a key point because during Isra or Prophet Muhammad's journey at night, he was not in the vicinity of the Kaaba, he was lying on his bed in Mecca. God mentioned in the verse that he started Isra from Al-Haram Masjid, referring to Mecca, not simply the mosque as we know now. That's because the word Masjid means the place that God is worshipped in the form of prostration or sajda in Arabic. It's worth mentioning that worship through prostration or sajda in Arabic is the means of prayer that distinguished Abyssinian churches and temples until today. Yes, Christians who worship in the Abyssinian highlands, the Tur, perform prostration or sajda in Arabic in worship, exactly the same as Muslims and contrary to Christian worship in the east and west. The temples and churches of Aksum or Aksum that are located in Tigray followed similar methods of worship like mosques or masjids even before the revelation of Islam. On the heights in the sacred city of Aksum, there is a unique tourist attraction, one of the most famous churches in the world, Abuna Yamata, which is carved inside a huge rock 2,500 meters tall. It contains the oldest Bible written in the Abyssinian language, Ge'ez, which is the South Arabian language. If you are successful in climbing the mountain and reaching the church inside the rock, you will discover that in fact prayers performed in there, similar to a mosque or masjids, are through prostration or sajda in Arabic. It's also worth mentioning that the current Dome of the Rock inside what is currently called the Aqsa Mosque or Masjid in Palestine was built after the advent of Islam. It was built by the Umayyad Caliphate Abdul Malik bin Marwan in the year 688 AD. Fifth, all the mosques in the world have been designed so that their front wall is perpendicular to the direction of the Kaaba facing Mecca. In other words, the front wall of any mosque or masjid is perpendicular to one of the side walls of the Kaaba. Since the Kaaba is the first house of worship for people, the first sanctuary appointed for mankind was that at Bakha, which means Kaaba, a blessed place, a guidance for the peoples. Then the Kaaba, according to Quran, is the first Qibla that God made for prophets and messengers. That implies that all the houses of worship of the prophets before changing the Qibla to Bayt al-Maqdis had to be built in such a way that their front wall would be perpendicular to one of the walls of the Kaaba, and that's exactly how Yeha Temple is designed. So despite the fact that the Yeha Temple is the oldest place of worship standing today with its 4 walls in the Abyssinian highlands, the Tur, long before Christ, its front wall is directly perpendicular to the right wall, the Al-Yamani corner of the Kaaba. It's easy to see on Google Earth how the Yeha Temple is directly facing Kaaba in a perfectly perpendicular way. This implies a historical connection or tie between the building of the Kaaba and the Temple of Yeha, where the Temple of Yeha is Bayt al-Maqdis and Aksum in Tigray, Ethiopia, is the Aqsa Mosque or Masjid, where people who worship perform prostration or sajda. Muslims are ordered when they do tawaf around Kaaba to say, "Our Lord, grant us good in this world and good in the hereafter, and save us from the chastisement of the fire of the hell." This is when they reach the Al-Yamani corner of the Kaaba, or in other words, when they reach the imaginary line that makes the front wall of the Yeha Temple perpendicular to the Al-Yamani corner of Kaaba. This supplication combines the beginning and the ending together, the beginning of humanity, the beginning of the covenant with God on the Abyssinian highlands, the Tur, and at the same time the ending on the land of Al-Mahshar or the gathering, which is also the Abyssinian highlands, the Tur. Because Prophet Muhammad said about Bayt al-Maqdis, it is the land of the resurrection and the gathering. Sixth, the relationship between Bayt al-Maqdis and Kaaba is between the east and the west. When the verse was revealed to Prophet Muhammad about changing the direction of Qibla while he was praying in Medina, he was facing Bayt al-Maqdis. He then switched his direction towards the Kaaba, and here the Quran says, "The fools among the people will say, what has turned them from their Qibla which they had? Say, the east and the west belong only to Allah. He guides whom he likes to the right path." It's clear in the verse that Prophet Muhammad changed his direction of prayer between the east and west. This is the geographic relationship between the Kaaba, east, and Yeha Temple, west. As for the relationship between the Kaaba and what is referred to as Bayt al-Maqdis in Palestine, it's a relationship between north and south, not of east and west, as the verse clearly states.